Ugly motherfucker.
So, with another hunt on the horizon, Predator Badlands, I decided that it was time to do something a little bit crazy. I sat down recently and rewatched the entire Predator franchise from start to finish. Every single movie, every single hunt, from the humor jungles of '87 to the CGI-riddled messes of the modern era. Now, I briefly talked about all of the movies in my Prey video a couple years back, and about Aliens vs Predator in my video dedicated to the Alien franchise. But now with Predator Badlands coming soon, it was a bit of a special time to rewatch the whole franchise. And I have a confession to make. During this marathon, this descent into madness, there was one particular movie which after rewatch wasn't that bad as I thought the first time. So the Predator franchise, it's one of the most fascinating, frustrating, and downright bizarre series in Hollywood history. It started with a film that is a near perfect masterpiece of action and horror. It gave us one of the most iconic movie monsters of all time, a creature built on pure primal terror and the thrill of the hunt. And since then, it's been a non-stop roller coaster of baffling decisions, studio interference, occasional flashes of brilliance, and absolute soul-crushing garbage. It's like watching a master hunter slowly devolve into a clumsy kid tripping over his feet in the dark. How do you go from the sweaty testosterone-fueled suspense of the original to the Predator 2018? Well, we're going to get into that. And believe me, we are. So that's what we're here to do today. We're going to dive deep into every single film in the Predator franchise, from the iconic highs to the laughably low lows. I've just come out of the other side of this marathon. My mind is fresh, the wounds are still open, and I have a lot to say. So we're going to dissect what made this franchise a legend and what turned it into a punchline. So let's begin. Alright, let's talk about the original, the one that got everything right. After sitting through the entire franchise, coming back to this one feels like finding an oasis in a desert of absolute dog shit. I'm not exaggerating when I say that Predator is a masterpiece, a perfect fusion of horror and action at the same time, a film so timeless that it feels just as raw and intense today as it did back in 1987. It's a blueprint that, as we're about to see, Hollywood spent the next 30 years desperately trying and failing to recreate. The film's first act of genius is how it deceives you. For the first 30 minutes, you think you know exactly what movie you're watching. A team of absolute units, led by Arnold Schwarzenegger at the peak of his powers, drops into a Central American jungle for a standard rescue mission. They're walking cliches, sure, but they're the best damn cliches you've ever seen. We're talking about a squad of what the script famously called sexual tyrannosaurs, armed to the teeth and spitting one-liners so hard that it feels like a follow-up to Commando. You're expecting them to mow down some rebels, flex their biceps, and fly off into the sunset, and for a moment, that's exactly what happens. The raid on the guerrilla camp is pure 80s action excess, though it's a fun piece of trivia that McTiernan himself hated how that sequence was shot by the second unit, finding it too static and generic compared to the fluid kinetic style he brought to the rest of the film. But then, the tone shifts. John McTiernan, the absolute madman behind the camera, starts to tighten the screws. The jungle, which was just a backdrop, becomes a character. It's hot, it's suffocating, and it feels like the trees themselves are watching. And that feeling wasn't just good acting. The production was an absolute nightmare. They were filming in the remote Mexican wilderness, dealing with oppressive heat, freezing nights, snakes, scorpions, and non-stop food poisoning. The exhaustion and sweat you see on the actor's face, that's not just performance, that's genuine misery. That raw, visceral edge of the film has come from a place of real physical hardship, something you just can't fake on a comfortable studio backlot. McTiernan understood that true horror is about what you don't see, so he makes you wait. You get glimpses, a heat signature, a shimmering distortion, the aftermath of unspeakable violence. And that shimmering effect, by the way, is a piece of old school practical genius. They had an actor run around in a bright red suit because red is the furthest color from the green of the jungle and the blue of the sky. And then they used optical effects to essentially key out the red shape, creating that ghostly outline. It's an incredibly clever in-camera solution that looks a million times better than most modern weightless CGI. This is the kind of ingenuity that earned the film an Oscar nomination for visual effects, and that's why it still looks so damn good today. McTiernan holds back the full reveal of the Predator for what feels like an eternity, and that patience is what builds the unbearable suspense. You feel the team's confidence starting to crack. These titans who just wiped out an entire camp without breaking a sweat are suddenly spooked. They're being hunted and they don't even know by what. And that's the second bit of genius here. These guys aren't just muscle-bound grunts. They feel like a real team.
Mac.
match.
The banter, the inside jokes. A lot of that is thanks to Shane Black, who was brought on to punch up the dialogue before being unceremoniously flayed alive. It makes you like these guys, and the backstory there is pure Hollywood irony. The studio didn't entirely trust McTiernan, who was a relatively new director at the time, so they hired Black, a hotshot screenwriter, to play Hawkins, thinking he could keep an eye on things and do rewrites on the set. The irony, of course, is that the guy they hired to babysit a genius director would later return to helm the franchise's most spectacular train wreck. But here, in his element, his dialogue is gold. You believe in their camaraderie, so when they start getting picked off one by one, it actually means something. Even Arnie isn't just a walking bicep. This is one of his best performances. He sells the fear, the desperation, and the eventual primal rage of a man pushed to the absolute limit. But let's talk about the star of the show, the monster, the Yautja. The Predator design is one of the most iconic in cinema history, right up there with the Xenomorph. But the most incredible thing about this legendary creature is that it almost wasn't. The original design was, well, it was a disaster. It looked like a clumsy red space chicken, and they actually put Jean-Claude Van Damme in the suit, who apparently hated every single second of it before getting fired. Like, can you even imagine this masterpiece, this titan of sci-fi horror? It was almost a joke. It was Arnie who suggested they call in his friend, the legendary Stan Winston. Winston inspired by a drawing of a Rastafarian warrior and a suggestion from James Cameron to add mandibles. That created the icon we know today. And they put the 7'2" Kevin Peter Hall in the suit, an actor who gave the creature a sense of grace and deliberate lethal movement that a stuntman just couldn't replicate. He is the Predator. And as the film barrels into the second half, it sheds its action movie skin completely and becomes a pure slasher film. The squad is whittled down, the tech is rendered useless, and the dialogue evaporates. The final 30 minutes are almost silent, a primal struggle between two apex predators. It's Dutch, stripped of his guns, his team, and his bravado, relying on pure instinct. He's covered in mud, crafting primitive traps, letting out a war cry that echoes through the jungle. It's man versus monster in its purest form. And Alan Silvestri's score is the thundering heartbeat of it all. Music is no doubt a narrative tool here. It starts as a confident, brassy military march, reflecting the team's arrogance. But as the film progresses, that march gets corrupted, interrupted by strange tribal percussion and unsettling strings. The theme of the hunter slowly overpowering the theme of the hunted. It's a perfect blend of military march and tribal dread that gets under your skin. This is filmmaking at its most visceral. Predator just works because it's simple, it's smart, and utterly confident in what it is. It establishes the Predator's code of honor. It doesn't kill the unarmed. It respects a worthy challenge without ever needing a single line of exposition. It's all shown, not told. It's a film that respects its audience, respects its characters, and above all, respects its monster. It's set a bar so high that the franchise has been tripping over it ever since. So, how do you follow up perfection? The short answer is you don't. You can't. Trying to recreate that magic of the first film would have been a suicide mission. A straight up remake with a different cast in a different jungle, it would have been torn to shreds, and rightfully so. The filmmakers behind Predator 2, led by director Stephen Hopkins, seemed to understand this, and so they made the only smart move they could. They didn't even try to go back to the jungle. Instead, they took the hunt to a whole new hunting ground, the sweaty, piss-stained concrete jungle of 1997 Los Angeles. Frankly speaking, it was a ballsy move. Taking this primal stealth-based creature and dropping it into the middle of a citywide gang war during a record-breaking heatwave is a fantastic concept. And the film immediately throws you into the chaos. The opening sequence is an absolute sensory overload of gunfire, violence, and mayhem. It's loud, it's aggressive, and it establishes a completely different tone from the slow burn tension of the original. This movie is not trying to be subtle. It wants to be nasty. It's so violent, in fact, that it was originally slapped with the dreaded NC-17 rating by the MPAA and had to be cut down multiple times just to secure an R. It's a grimy, mean-spirited, and ridiculously over-the-top action flick that feels like it snorted a line with RoboCop.
Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
Stay out of trouble.
And replacing Arnie was another impossible task, so again, they didn't try. The role was offered to him, but he was either deep into Terminator 2 or just didn't like the script, depending on who you ask. So instead of another mountain of muscle, we get Danny Glover as Lieutenant Mike Harrigan. He's not a demigod carved from Austrian oak, he's just a cop. He's stubborn, he's tired, and he's definitely too old for this shit.
I'm too old for this shit.
Glover brings a weary humanity to the role that is completely different from Dutch's stoic confidence. Harrigan even has a fear of heights, which is a small but brilliant character detail that makes him feel grounded and vulnerable. He's out of his depth from the start, and it makes him a far more relatable protagonist. You actually believe that this guy could exist, whereas Dutch and his crew felt like they walked straight out of a comic book, which is fine. But the problem is the rest of the human characters in this movie are, well, they're mostly just walking targets. We get a fantastically unhinged performance from Gary Busey as Special Agent Peter Keyes, who feels like he wandered in from a different, even crazier movie. His whole government conspiracy subplot adds a layer of paranoia, but his team is so underdeveloped they barely register before they've turned into Predator kibble. And then there's Bill Paxton, who as Detective Jerry Lambert steals every single scene he's in with an infectious, cocky energy. He's the comic relief, the audience surrogate who can't believe the shit they're seeing. But unlike the first film's crew, you never really feel that sense of camaraderie. They're just colleagues, so when they get slaughtered in that stunningly brutal subway sequence, it lacks the same emotional gut punch. The film also suffers from a seriously saggy middle act. After that explosive opening, the pace grinds to a halt as Harrigan runs around trying to figure out what the hell is going on. The tension just bleeds out and it becomes a fairly standard and kind of dull police procedural. But just when you think the movie has lost its way, it redeems itself in its final act. And this right here is the movie's single greatest contribution to the franchise, the world building. Predator 2 is where the lore explodes. We get to see a whole arsenal of new weapons. The iconic smart disc, the net gun, the spear. These instantly became fan favorites. All of it was brought to life with impressive practical effects that still look fantastic today. Kevin Peter Hall also returned as the Predator, and he's even more agile and aggressive in this new urban playground. We learn about the Predator's code of honor in much more detail too. It won't kill children or pregnant women, and it sees them as non-threats. A crucial piece of characterization that elevates it beyond a simple monster. And then we get the finale. Harrigan, chasing the Predator onto its ship, discovers the trophy room, and there it is, hanging on the wall, a xenomorph skull. Now, I can't overstate what a mind-blowing moment this was for fans in 1990. It's not just an Easter egg, this was the confirmation of a shared universe that we had only dreamed about. It was one of the greatest holy shit moments in movie history. A single shot that launched 1,000 comic books, video games, and eventually 2 very, very questionable movies. And if that wasn't enough, the ending cements the Predator as a species with deep warrior culture. After Harrigan finally defeats his hunter, the other Predators don't kill him. They see him as a worthy victor. Their elder presents him with a trophy of his own, an antique flintlock pistol dated 1715. That single prop does more world building than most modern franchises manage in an entire trilogy. It tells us they've been coming here for centuries, that they have a code, that this is an ancient ritual. And as we now know, watching this back after seeing Prey, this detail became so much more significant. It's a beautiful piece of connective tissue that was laid down decades ago, a testament to the filmmaker's foresight. Look, Predator 2 is not the masterpiece that the original was. It's messy, the pacing is all over the place, and it lacks the raw focused tension. But time has been incredibly kind to it. What felt like a disappointing step down in 1990 now feels like a genuinely underrated and ambitious sequel. It took risks, it expanded the universe in fascinating ways, and it had the guts to be its own weird, violent, grimy thing. It's a mean, messy, and deeply flawed sequel, but man, it's got soul. I enjoyed rewatching this one a lot, and compared to the soulless factory assembled products that would follow, Predator 2 starts to look like a goddamn masterpiece. Alright, so after a 20-year hiatus from a proper solo outing, and look, we'll get to the absolute car crash that was the AVP movies, don't you worry, the franchise finally decided here to sober up and try again. It's 2010, and Robert Rodriguez, a genuine fan of the original, steps in to produce what was essentially sold to us as the true sequel to Predator. This was his baby, an idea he'd been kicking around since he wrote a script for it back in the 90s. The pitch, now directed by Nimrod Antal, was simple. Forget Predator 2, forget the crossover games, let's get back to basics. Let's go back to the jungle. And on paper, everything about Predators sounds like a home run. The concept of this film is genuinely brilliant. You take the core idea of the original, a group of the deadliest people on Earth being hunted by something even deadlier. And that's where the fun starts, but this time, they're not on Earth. They're abducted and dropped into an alien planet that serves as a massive private game preserve for the Predators. The Hunted are a collection of killers, mercenaries, and soldiers from from all over the globe, each one an apex predator in their own right. The title, Predators, this time is about humans too. It's a fantastic, simple, and effective expansion of the lore. The film even starts strong. The opening is disorienting and chaotic, with our heroes literally falling from the sky. The first 20 minutes, as this ragtag group of strangers tries to figure out where they are and why they're there, are genuinely tense and intriguing. The cast is stacked too. You've got Mahershala Ali, Walton Goggins, Danny Trejo, Adrian Brody. I mean, the talent is there. Next, the music kicks in. John Debney brilliantly resurrects Alan Silvestri's iconic score, and for a glorious moment, you think to yourself, they actually did it. They're back. But then the movie keeps going, and the more it goes on, the more you realize that while it has all the right ingredients, it partly forgot the recipe. You can feel the missing chunks of the movie that were clearly left on the cutting room floor. Reports mention around 11 minutes of character building dialogue were hacked out to speed up the pacing, but it has the opposite effect. It guts the narrative, leaving the film feeling disjointed and stitched together. The original film was a brilliant, thinly veiled allegory for the Vietnam War, an overconfident American force getting torn apart by a guerrilla-style enemy. It actually had something to say. Predators has almost nothing to say. It's a hollow echo, a film so slavishly devoted to mimicking the structure of the first movie that it forgets to have an identity of its own. The biggest problem is the characters, because they're not characters, they're archetypes. We have the Yakuza guy, the Russian Spetsnaz, the cartel enforcer, and the death row inmate. There's no banter, no camaraderie, no real personality. The one exception might be Walton Goggins, who brings a genuinely unsettling live wire energy to his role. He's the only one who feels truly unpredictable, a flicker of personality the film desperately needed. The rest are just game pieces on a board waiting to be knocked over, and leading them all is Adrian Brody as Royce. Now look, I get what they were going for here. The decision to cast him was a deliberate attempt to subvert the muscle-bound hero trope. The experiment, whilst noble on paper, completely backfires though. Brody, bless his heart, very talented actor, just can't pull it off. He spends the entire movie doing a gravelly Batman-esque voice, trying so hard to be a badass that it just comes off as cosplay. He lacks every ounce of the charisma that made Arnie so magnetic. You never once believe he's the deadliest man on the planet. No, you just see an Oscar-winning actor who looks deeply uncomfortable holding a giant gun. The film is also obsessed with paying homage to the point where it just feels like lazy plagiarism. We get a moment where the Yakuza character Hanzo decides to have a one-on-one duel with a predator with a katana. It's a cool idea, I guess, but it's a direct, almost shot-for-shot lift of Billy's sacrifice from the original, only without any of the tension or emotional weight. Then, in the finale, Royce covers himself in mud to hide his heat signature. The original film spent 30 minutes building to that primal strategic climax, but here, it's crammed into the last 10 minutes and feels like a cheap, unearned callback. But when you rewatch it now, after all of the mess the franchise created, it's not all that bad. Lawrence Fishburne's cameo as Noland, a soldier who has survived on the planet for years and has gone completely insane, is a fantastic shot of weird paranoid energy that the movie desperately needed. And the practical effects for the creatures, handled by the legendary K&B EFX, are top notch. The classic Predator, when it shows up, looks fantastic. The Super Predators, on the other hand, their designs are just so over the top and generic. They look like something out of a mid-2000s video game, all spikes and unnecessary armor. They lack the elegant, tribal simplicity of the original Hunter. The director also makes the classic mistake of not shooting them from low angles enough, so they often lack that intimidating, towering presence. Still, the action they're brought into, and it's really, really nice. The choreography is solid, and the violence is really satisfying. So summarizing Predators, it's kind of the ultimate what-if movie. It had everything going for it: a killer concept, a great producer, a solid cast, and a reverence for the source material. But it's a cautionary tale about the difference between homage and imitation. It copies all the moves of the original film, but understands only some of its magic. And still, it's a competent, watchable, entertaining, but ultimately forgettable sequel that proves that just going back to the jungle isn't enough. You have to remember why the jungle was so terrifying in the first place. So 8 more long years passed, and it felt like Hollywood had finally learned its lesson. Maybe they were going to let the hunter rest. But then, news broke that sent a shockwave of cautious optimism through the fanbase. Shane Black, the man who played Hawkins in the original, the writer-director behind masterpieces like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Nice Guys, was coming back to the franchise. It really felt like a good thing because he was one of the architects of the original's legendary dialogue, a guy who understood the tone. This was it. This was going to be the one. This was going to be the glorious return to form we had all been waiting for. But then the movie came out. I don't think I actually have the words in my vocabulary to adequately describe the catastrophic, soul-destroying train wreck that is The Predator. To call it a disappointment would be the understatement of the century. It's a cinematic war crime, an incoherent, tonally schizophrenic, badly written, atrociously edited, and profoundly stupid mess that takes every single thing that made the original great and systematically sets it on fire. After my recent rewatch, I can confidently say this is, without a shadow of a doubt, the single worst film in the entire Predator franchise. Yes, it is worse than AVP Requiem. At least that film had the decency to be so dark you couldn't see how bad it was. This film puts its incompetence on full display, right in your face for 2 agonizing hours. The most baffling thing here is the tone. Shane Black, a master of witty, character-driven action comedy, seems to have completely forgotten how to balance any of these elements. The film is desperately trying to be a quippy, MCU-style romp. It's as if he took his notes from Iron Man 3 and just cranked the dial to a self-parodying 11. The characters, a busload of mentally ill soldiers dubbed the Loonies, never, for one single second, act like they are in a horror movie. They are never scared, they are never intimidated, they are just endlessly cracking jokes, even as they're being ripped to shreds. The result is a film with absolutely zero stakes, zero tension, and zero suspense. When a character gets killed, the scene is immediately undercut by a stupid one-liner. It's like watching a stand-up comedy routine at a funeral. Nothing lands and it's just deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And the plot? It's a stitched-together Frankenstein's monster of terrible ideas. We have a fugitive predator who is trying to deliver a gift to humanity to help them fight the other predators. We have an upgrade predator, a giant 11-foot-tall CGI monstrosity who is hunting the other predator. We also have predator dogs. Yes, predator dogs. One of which gets shot in the head with a tranquilizer and becomes a friendly domesticated pet for the good guys. I am not making that up. And the big mind-numbing secret they're all fighting over, the predators are harvesting the DNA of the best warriors from other species to upgrade themselves. It is a convoluted, unnecessary retcon that demystifies the creature completely. They are not honorable hunters anymore. Now, they're just intergalactic scientists running a genetic engineering program. But the film's most offensive sin is its treatment of autism. The main character's son, Rory, is on the autism spectrum, which the movie presents, and I'm not making this up, as the next step in human evolution. Autism is treated as a literal superpower, allowing him to instantly understand and operate advanced alien technology. It is one of the most tone-deaf, ignorant, and downright insulting plot devices I have seen in a major blockbuster. It's genuinely gross. And you can feel the studio interference and the frantic reshoots in every single frame of this film. The editing is a nightmare. Scenes start and end abruptly. Characters disappear and reappear without explanation. And the entire third act was clearly reshot from the ground up into a chaotic, weightless CGI fest that takes place at night in a forest, making it impossible to see half the time. The human big bad in this film dies and you don't even realize. It's so dumb. The original upgrade Predator design, which was a practical suit, looked fantastic, but for some reason, they replaced much of it with shoddy digital effects that look worse than a PlayStation 3 cutscene. And the ending? They kill the upgrade Predator, and the gift from the fugitive Predator is revealed to be a Predator killer suit, a ridiculous Iron Man style mech that looks like it was designed by a 12-year-old. It is the single dumbest thing in the entire history of this franchise, a final spit in your face for all that the original stood for. Apparently, there were alternate endings filmed where the pod opened to reveal either Ellen Ripley or a grown-up Newt from Aliens, which honestly might have been even dumber. The Predator is what happens when a talented filmmaker is either completely asleep at the wheel or gets neutered by a committee of studio executives who think they know what the audience wants. It's a film made by people who have seemingly never even seen the original, or they just hated it. The Predator is a movie that trades suspense for slapstick and horror for hollow spectacle. So it kind of took a franchise that was already on life support and just pulled the plug. All right, buckle up, because we're about to take a detour into the cinematic twilight zone. After the Xenomorph skull tease in Predator 2, the fanboy corner of the universe absolutely exploded. The idea of these two titans of sci-fi horror clashing on the big screen was the stuff of legend. We had the Dark Horse comics, we had the incredible video games, and they were awesome. For over a decade, we dreamed of what a proper movie could be. It was the ultimate crossover, a pop culture event in the making. And then in 2004, Paul W.S. Anderson, the man who brought us Mortal Kombat and the Resident Evil saga, was handed the keys to the kingdom. What could possibly go wrong? The first and most fatal wound Alien vs. Predator inflicted upon itself was the PG-13 rating. Let me say that again. They took two of the most violent R-rated franchises in history, one built on Freudian body horror and acidic blooded nightmares, the other on skinning people alive and ripping out their spines, and they neutered them for a teenage audience. It's a decision so mind-numbingly stupid, so fundamentally disrespectful to the source material, that the movie was dead on arrival. The official MPAA rating even hilariously listed slime as one of the reasons for the rating. Slime. We've gone from chest bursters and spinal cord trophies to being worried about goo. It's like making a John Wick movie with paintball guns. Now, to the film's credit, the concept is kind of cool. An ancient pyramid buried under ice in Antarctica, a sacrificial labyrinth where young predators prove their worth by hunting the ultimate prey, the xenomorphs. It's a decent setup. Anderson even brought in Lance Henriksen to play Charles Bishop Wayland, the founder of the infamous company, creating a confusing but intriguing link to the Alien series. And honestly, the first half of the film, as the team of disposable scientists explore the shifting temple, has a decent claustrophobic atmosphere. The production design is solid, and the practical effects on the predators and the massive animatronic alien queen are genuinely impressive. That queen was the largest and most complex animatronic built at the time, which is a real testament to the artists at ADI. But then the fighting starts, and it's just limp. It's a sanitized, bloodless, and shockingly boring slap fight between two CGI monsters. The camera is too close, the editing is frantic, and you can feel the film desperately cutting away from any real impact or gore. The film's one saving grace, the one moment that almost makes it worth watching, is the final act, when the last surviving human, Alexa Woods, teams up with the last surviving predator, Scar, to fight the queen. It's undeniably badass. The visual of her wielding a spear made from a xenomorph tail and a shield made from its head is pure, unfiltered comic book cool. It's a moment of smart visual storytelling that briefly elevates the movie above its own mediocrity, but it's too little too late by that point. The human characters are so paper thin you forget their names the second they die, and the dialogue is pure functional exposition. Overall, it's not a terrible movie, but it's just a hollow, soulless, and completely forgettable product that failed to deliver on a decade of hype. A cinematic handshake when we were all promised a heavyweight brawl. And then came Requiem. If AVP was a misguided disappointment, AVP Requiem is a full-blown cinematic atrocity. Holy shit, this movie is bad. The studio clearly heard the complaints about the PG-13 rating and overcorrected in the most disgusting, artless way possible. They handed the film over to two visual effects artists, the brothers Strauss, who seemed to think that what fans wanted wasn't a good story, character, or suspense, but just more gore and darkness, and I mean that literally. AVP Requiem is, without any hyperbole, one of the worst lit films ever. It is physically impossible to see what is happening for about 90% of the runtime. Literally. I had to turn up the brightness on my TV to maximum just to make out blurry shapes. The directors claimed that this was a deliberate choice to create a documentary style feel and hide details. Like, are you kidding me? That's not style. That's an excuse for incompetence. The epic showdown we've all been waiting for is reduced to a murky mess of shadows and silhouettes. You can't tell the aliens from the predators. You can't tell who's winning, and frankly, you don't care anyway. But the darkness is almost a mercy because what you can see is just plain ugly. The film abandons any pretense of sci-fi horror and becomes a cheap, nasty teenage slasher flick set in a generic small town in Colorado. The characters are straight out of a C-list horror movie from the 80s. The pizza boy with a crush, the hot girl, her jerky boyfriend, the troubled ex-con. But it's a slasher film with a mean streak that crosses the line from edgy to just plain repulsive. It revels in cruelty for cruelty's sake. They kill a child in the first 20 minutes. They have the new Predalien hybrid, a cool concept completely wasted, impregnate pregnant women in a maternity ward, turning the subtext of the Alien films into grotesque, literal text. Not scary or shocking, just gross, artless, and completely unnecessary shock value. The one single, solitary good idea in this entire dumpster fire is the Predator Predator himself, nicknamed Wolf. He's a veteran, a cleaner sent to Earth to erase all evidence of the alien outbreak. He's a grizzled, competent badass, and his design, with his scarred face and dual plasma casters, is fantastic. He is far too cool a character to be wasted in a movie this irredeemably awful. He deserved better. We all deserved better. But what we got was the toxic sludge festering underneath the barrel. It's a joyless, ugly, and borderline unwatchable experience that represents the absolute worst of both franchises. And then, when all hope was lost, a miracle happened. Look, after the absolute franchise-killing train wreck that was The Predator, this series was dead. Not on life support, dead. Buried 6 feet under. So when I saw the trailer for a new movie called Prey, a low-budget, straight-to-streaming prequel set in 1719, my expectations were so low, they were drilling for oil. I thought, here we go again, a historical setting, a young female Comanche warrior as the lead. In the hands of modern Hollywood, this had all the markings of another lecture disguised as a movie, riddled with plot armor and cheap-looking CGI. Now, I've already done a full deep dive on this movie on the channel. It's actually the first video I ever uploaded on this channel, and my feelings haven't changed one bit. I went into my first watch fully prepared for the worst, and instead, I witnessed a resurrection. Prey is a great movie and a great Predator movie at the same time, period. It is, without any competition, the best sequel in this entire franchise, and honestly, it gives the original a pretty good run for its money, which is the highest praise I can possibly give. The genius of Prey is its simplicity. Director Dan Trachtenberg understood something that every other filmmaker after McTiernan seemed to forget. The Predator is scariest when it's stripped back to its primal essence. The movie throws out all the convoluted lore about Predator civil wars, genetic upgrades, and Iron Man suits. It returns to the core concept, a single skilled hunter in a hostile environment, facing an alien killer. By taking away the machine guns and the modern technology, the stakes are immediately raised. The film brilliantly recalibrates the power dynamic. In the original, it was about stripping the most heavily armed soldiers on the planet of their technological advantage. Here, the advantage was never there to begin with. It's about intelligence and a smart way of fighting between two warriors. That is what it is about. It's a purer, more elemental version of the same theme, and it's incredibly effective. From the first frame, the film is visually stunning. This is without question the best looking Predator movie that's ever been made. The sweeping shots of the Great Plains, the dense forest, the misty mountains, it feels raw, real, and visceral, like The Revenant with a 7-foot-tall alien in it. Trachtenberg and his cinematographer shot this on location using natural light as much as possible, and it pays off spectacularly. It is a crime against humanity that this was dumped on streaming. This was a film that was shot for the big screen, and you can feel it in every single immaculately composed frame. The authenticity extends to the incredible commitment to the Comanche culture. The filmmakers worked closely with Comanche advisors, and the result is a level of detail and respect that you almost never see in Hollywood. There's even a full Comanche dub of the film, which is the definitive way to watch it. And then there's our hero, Naru. The internet, of course, was ready to tear this character apart before the movie even came out, sharpening their Mary Sue accusations. They couldn't have been more wrong, though. Amber Midthunder delivers a phenomenal performance as a character who is the absolute antithesis of that modern archetype. Naru is not an instant badass. She's a skilled tracker, she's clever, but she's also flawed. In the beginning, she's overeager and makes mistakes. She gets in over her head, and she has to earn her victory. The film gives her a proper hero's journey. She wins not because she's physically stronger than the Predator, that would be ridiculous, but because she's an observer, ready to wait. She studies her enemy, learns its patterns, its weapons, its tactics, and its arrogance. The entire final act is a meticulously planned trap where Naru uses every piece of knowledge she's gathered, right down to the Predator's own targeting system, against it. And crucially, the film doesn't tear down the male characters to build her up. Her brother, Tabe, is a competent, respected warrior in his own right, and their relationship is a core part of the story. He supports her, but he also doubts her, and their dynamic feels genuine. This is how you write a strong female lead. Take notes, Hollywood. The Predator itself is also a brilliant reimagining. This feral Predator feels more primitive, more brutal. Its technology is a step down from what we've seen before. The plasma caster is less advanced, using projectiles instead of a pure energy energy beam. The armor is more minimal, and it helps make the fight so much more believable. Its mask, a carved bone-like skull of some previous trophy, is easily one of the coolest and most intimidating designs in the series. I will say, they somehow managed to make him even uglier with the mask off, but that's a minor complaint. This hunter takes an absolute beating throughout the film, from a grizzly bear in an absolutely legendary sequence, from the French trappers, from Naru and her tribe. He is not an invincible god. He is a powerful creature that can be hurt, that can be outsmarted, which makes its eventual defeat feel earned, not just convenient for the plot. Prey is a masterclass in how to revive a dying franchise. It respects the DNA of the original while telling a fresh, standalone story. It's smart, it's brutal, it's beautifully shot, and it's anchored by a fantastic lead performance. It even manages to weave in a perfect, subtle connection to Predator 2 with that flintlock pistol. A piece of lore that just clicks everything into place and rewards longtime fans without alienating newcomers. After years of wandering in the cinematic desert, Prey proved that the hunt was far from over. It proved that this concept, when handled with care and intelligence, is still as potent as it ever was. Alright, so this is it, the final film on the rewatch list. If you told me a week ago that one of the best Predator movies would be a straight-to-streaming animated feature, I would have laughed in your face. An animated movie? After the live-action films have been struggling for decades to get it right? It sounds like a recipe for cheap, Saturday morning cartoon garbage. But with Dan Trachtenberg once again attached, this time as a guiding creative force, I went in with a flicker of hope ignited by the triumph of Prey. And I'm so glad that I did, because Predator: Killer of Killers is a bold, brutal, and incredibly ambitious shot in the arm that this franchise desperately needed. It feels like the second part of a 1-2 punch that knocked the franchise back into relevance. The first thing that hits you is the animation. Created using Unreal Engine 5, the film has a gorgeous, stylized look that feels like a grittier, blood-soaked version of something like Arcane or Spider-Verse. Now, it's not quite on that level. The frame rate can get a little choppy during some of the faster action scenes, making them feel a little bit jerky, but the art style is perfect for this universe. Animation allows the filmmakers to do things that would be prohibitively expensive, if not impossible, in live action. An insane World War II dogfight between a P-40 Warhawk and a Predator ship, a Viking longship being stalked through a foggy fjord by a hunter that moves like a wraith. They can just go nuts with the concepts, and they absolutely do. More importantly, they can go nuts with the violence. The action in this movie is off the charts, delivering some of the most creative and ridiculously brutal kills in the entire franchise, bar none. The constraints of budget, stunt work, and practical effects are gone, leaving only pure, imaginative carnage. The film's structure is its most brilliant move. It's a pseudo-anthology telling 3 separate stories of warriors from different eras being hunted. The Shield, featuring a Viking shield maiden, the Sword with a feudal Japanese Ronin, and the Bullet, starring an American World War II fighter pilot. Each segment feels distinct with its own tone and style. The Viking and samurai stories are by far the strongest. They're moody, atmospheric, and character-driven, feeling like lost chapters from a dark fantasy epic. They take the hunt seriously and build a genuine sense of dread. The silent, snowy duel in the samurai segment is a masterclass in visual storytelling, and the Vikings' desperate, brutal struggle for survival is pure primal Predator. The World War II segment, unfortunately, is the weakest link. The pilot Torres is written like a wisecracking Marvel character who's wandered into the wrong movie. He's constantly quipping in the face of mortal danger, and his reaction to being hunted by a space alien is less terror and more mild annoyance. The tone is jarringly goofy and completely undermines the stakes. It feels like a remnant of the Shane Black era of comedy that the franchise so desperately needed to leave behind. It's a frustrating misstep in an otherwise incredibly strong lineup. But just when you think you're just watching 3 disconnected shorts, the film pulls its trump card. It's revealed that these warriors, upon their defeat, aren't just killed, they're captured, put into cryostasis, and brought back to the Predator homeworld, Yautja Prime. And for what? To compete in a grand tournament on a massive planetary arena. A tournament called Killer of Killers. Okay, the name is ridiculously stupid. It sounds like a joke, a meme your uncle would post on Facebook, but the concept, it's pure unfiltered fanboy genius. It's the ultimate expansion of the game preserve idea from Predators, but executed with so much more confidence and imagination. This is where the lore building goes into overdrive. We finally see the Predator homeworld. We see their society. We're even introduced to a Predator king, a colossal ruler who wears a cloak made of xenomorph tails and has alien queen skulls as shoulder pads. pads. It is absurdly, gloriously metal. We see different clans, different types of predators, including redesigns of the feral and upgrade predators, finally done justice. And we finally get a sense of their hierarchy and culture. This is the kind of deep dive into the mythology that fans have been craving for decades, and the film delivers it in spades. It even includes a fantastic nod to the flintlock pistol from Predator 2 and Prey, cementing its place in the newly revitalized timeline. While the final tournament itself feels a little rushed and underdeveloped compared to the fantastic build-up, the implications are massive. We see that the Predators have a whole collection of the greatest warriors from across time, including, in a fantastic reveal, Naru from Prey preserved in a cryopod. The door is now wide open for the most insane crossover stories imaginable. Dutch versus a samurai, Naru versus a Viking, a team-up of history's greatest killers against legions of predators. The possibilities here are endless, and it lays a perfect foundation for future installments like Badlands. Killer of Killers, again, like most of the movies in this franchise, is not a perfect film. The World War II segment is a tonal misfire, and the ending feels a little bit rushed, but it's a bold, creative, and incredibly entertaining experiment that proves animation might just be the perfect medium for this franchise going forward. Alongside Prey, it shows that with Dan Trachtenberg guiding the ship, there is a clear, intelligent, and exciting vision for the future of this universe. It's a film that respects the lore, expands it in meaningful ways, and delivers some of the most brutal and inventive action in the entire series. It's a hell of a ride. So, what have we learned from this marathon through 35 years of spine-ripping and jungle warfare? We've learned that the Predator franchise is one of the most schizophrenic, inconsistent, and downright frustrating series in movie history. It's a brand that has soared to the absolute heights of genre perfection and plummeted to the soul-crushing depths of unwatchable garbage. For every brilliant idea, there are 10 monumentally stupid ones. For every moment of raw primal tension, there's an avalanche of quippy, weightless nonsense. The DNA of a perfect Predator movie has been there since 1987. It's not complicated. It's about stripping everything back. It's about suspense over spectacle. It's about a smart, adaptable hero outthinking, not outmuscling a technologically superior hunter. It's about that primal, terrifying feeling of being watched, of being prey. When the franchise remembers that, like in Predator 2's grimy finale, or the raw survivalism of Prey, it works. It sings. But for decades, Hollywood seemed determined to forget those lessons. They tried to turn it into a brainless monster mash with AVP. They tried to turn it into a hollow, soulless follower with Predators. And in their most baffling move of all, they tried to turn it into a laugh-a-minute MCU knockoff with Shane Black's 2018 disaster. They just couldn't resist the urge to over-explain, to over-design, and to suffocate the simple, terrifying core of the concept under layers of convoluted lore and terrible jokes. They spent 30 years trying to recreate the magic, but never realizing that the original was perfect because it was so damn simple. But after this rewatch, I'm left with something I haven't felt for this franchise in a very, very long time: hope. The 1-2 punch of Prey and Killer of Killers has been a genuine resurrection. It feels like for the first time since the 90s, the franchise is in the hands of someone who actually understands it. Dan Trachtenberg and his team have proven twice now that they get what makes this hunter tick. They're not afraid to take risks, to explore new genres, new formats, and new eras, all while holding onto that essential primal core. They've shown that the key isn't to endlessly remake the original, but to take its spirit and apply it to new, exciting scenarios. And now we have Predator Badlands. For the first time, a new Predator movie doesn't fill me with a sense of impending dread. It fills me with genuine excitement. With the groundwork laid by the last two films, the deep history, the cryo chambers of legendary warriors, the very culture of the Yautja, the possibilities here are endless. The core concept of the ultimate hunter remains one of the most potent in all of science fiction. It's a monster that can be dropped into any time, any place, and immediately create a compelling conflict. So what can we expect from Predator Badlands? With Trachtenberg steering the ship, I think we can expect a film that is, above all, smart. The title itself suggests a few possibilities. Whatever path they choose, the lesson is clear. Respect the monster, but don't be afraid to innovate the hunt. Despite all the missteps, all the bad decisions, and all the cinematic sins, the Predator has survived. If Badlands can continue this new trajectory, it can now recapture that raw, primal spirit that made the original a masterpiece. This hunter might just rise again. So, that's a wrap for this video. Thank you so much for watching and for being with me on this journey of a rewatch. What are your thoughts on the franchise and its movies? Maybe you're a secret fan of that Shane Black movie. Or do you hate Prey? Like, relax, it's a safe place. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, if you have enjoyed this video and you want to see more deep dives like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.